Our story opens with the female lead pouring her soul into a fiery viola performance, twirling like she's in a dramatic music video nobody asked for, but everyone needs. As she plays, a single thought echoes in her mind: has anyone else ever caught the fever of love so bad it feels like a full-body glitch? Her love story kicks off at the tender age of 16, deep in a quiet village where the Wi-Fi is weak but emotions run high. That's where she meets him, Woo Jae-oppa. Not just any Woo Jae, her Woo Jae. He tells her that her music soothes his soul, even on the kind of days where nothing goes right and the universe seems personally offended by his existence. Every compliment from him turns her into a tomato with a violin. She swears she'd play for him whenever he wants, not because she's got time to spare, but because she wants to matter in his life, like the last puzzle piece in an emotional jigsaw. She believes his every word like it's gospel and truly thinks she can save him from whatever invisible storm cloud follows him around. That one evening, she plays like her bow is possessed, until, snap, a string breaks. Did it stop her? Nope. She's convinced she can carve a path into his heart, powered by love, music, and the kind of overconfidence only teenage girls and action movie heroes possess. Next up, we find a lively group of ladies gathered like it's brunch o'clock, but with more sparkle and less avocado toast. They're raising their glasses to celebrate none other than the bride-to-be, Im So-jung. Cheers and teasing fill the air as she thanks her friends for showing up and hyping her up like true ride or dies. One of them, clearly not letting old receipts go, playfully calls her out for diving into marriage first, even though So-jung once dramatically declared she'd never settle down, cut to everyone rolling their eyes with love. Another friend chimes in to double-check the big day, and So-jung confirms it's just 3 weeks away, cue the collective gasp and excited squeals. The crew breaks into praise for her snagging a talented pianist fiancé, and even more so for being a musical powerhouse herself as a violist. But while the energy is high and the glasses are clinking, one woman quietly sips her wine like she's in her own indie film. That's Solhee, elegant, calm, and clearly operating on a different emotional Wi-Fi. So-jung spots her across the room and lights up, calling out to her old friend. Turns out, they haven't seen each other since their days at the orchestra, where drama was tuned to concert pitch. Solhee gives a soft, composed smile, the kind that makes you wonder if she's hiding a sonata of secrets, and gently congratulates So-jung on the upcoming wedding. So-jung, glowing like every bride with 3 weeks to go and a Pinterest board in overdrive, leans towards Solhee and brings up something she's apparently heard through the grapevine, that Solhee now gives home lessons. Solhee nods politely, keeping things light, and says it's been fun working with students, though her tone suggests fun might be doing a bit too much heavy lifting. They exchange a few words, but something's clearly off. The air shifts. Nearby, a couple of the girls pause mid-sip, side-eyeing each other as if wondering, did we miss a memo? It's the kind of tension you can't exactly name, but it's sitting at the table anyway, probably sipping wine, too. Then So-jung, in the most casual of flexes, announces that she'll be hiring Solhee to tutor her future children, just as soon as she has them. Solhee doesn't say a word in response, but her perfectly neutral expression practically files a complaint. Her silence is loud, and it echoes with the weight of history. So, what's the backstory? Let's rewind. So-jung and Solhee go way back to their college days, where they were classic rivals, not the kind with sabotage and hair-pulling, more like cold smiles and tense applause. Both studied at a lesser-known music university in Seoul, where they were neck and neck as violists. Their skills and grades? Respectable, but not exactly chart-topping. After graduation, they both ended up in the same orchestra, nothing glamorous, just steady, middle-of-the-road musical life. But that rivalry? Still playing softly in the background, like a familiar tune you can't quite forget. Wondering why things between So-jung and Solhee feel like a tense duet with a missing beat? Well, surprise, it wasn't the music that caused the final dissonance. Nope, it was good old-fashioned boy trouble. Right on cue, said trouble makes his grand entrance. A young man strolls in like he owns the sheet music to everyone's hearts and casually announces he heard a rumor that beautiful ladies were partying here. Enter Jin Yoonho, the gifted pianist, future groom, and evidently, walking heartthrob. So-jung practically combusts with excitement, turning into a blushing mess as she squeals, honey, because apparently, subtlety didn't get the invite. Jin Yoonho plays it cool, claiming he was just in the area and decided to check in, as if he didn't know he'd cause a mild social earthquake. One of the ladies teases that he shouldn't be crashing a ladies-only hangout, but he just laughs it off, already winning hearts with his charm and those mysterious musician vibes. These days, So Jung is riding high on a bit of fame, thanks largely to her connection with Yoonho. She's practically a local celeb now, and she's worked that association like a pro, complete with social media clout and people pretending to care about viola solos. Jin Yoonho, ever the gentleman, brings gifts for the bride and her friends, adding even more sparkle to the already sparkly gathering. But while everyone is buzzing around him like he's the main character, which, to be fair, he kind of is, Seolhee sits still, because her brain is running a highlight reel of the past. Yes, So Jung used that relationship as a stepping stone, and Seolhee knows it. That's when it happens, Jin Yoonho's eyes meet Seolhee's. And just like that, the room gets 10 degrees more awkward. There's a history there. Oh, there's definitely a history. Jin Yoonho makes his way towards Seolhee, clearly surprised to see her like he just spotted a plot twist in real life. It's been ages since their paths crossed, but the memory hits hard. Back in their orchestra days, Yoonho used to wear his heart on his sleeve, always professing his love for Seolhee like he was auditioning for a K-drama. Things didn't quite pan out though, and Seolhee, ever the graceful realist, had gently turned him down. The funny twist? That's when So Jung swooped in, stepping into the girlfriend role like the understudy who suddenly got the lead. Seolhee knows this all too well. To her, the relationship always felt like a consolation prize wrapped in romance. As Yoonho stands there awkwardly, So Jung glides in like she's on cue, looping her arms around him with a gleaming smile and declaring how great it is to see her bestie Seolhee, because sure, it's totally natural she's here. Then comes the sneak attack. So Jung casually asks Seolhee if she's planning on getting married anytime soon. A random question, or maybe a well-aimed jab, especially since she follows it up with a not-so-gentle reminder that Seolhee stayed single all through university. Seolhee, calm as ever, wonders if So Jung's the one secretly anxious about her being single, then responds that she plans to take her time, slow and steady, maybe even post-30. Just when the tension seems to simmer down, one of the ladies, clearly a fan of chaos, jumps in and says Seolhee's only single because she's still hung up on her first love. Cue dramatic silence. So Jung blinks, stunned. The lady, clearly committed to the bit, adds, "You know. Woo Jae Oppa." Seolhee freezes, her mind catching up to the bomb that just dropped. Welp, there it is. Seolhee quickly denies waiting around for any so-called first love, brushing off the claim with a cool not into relationships vibe, like she's emotionally vegan or something. But the other lady clearly came armed with receipts and isn't backing down. She reminds everyone, loud enough for the wine glasses to vibrate, how Seolhee rejected every decent senior who asked her out, all because of that one guy she liked. The plot thickens as she reveals that Woo Jae Oppa was someone Seolhee met way back in middle school, a countryside kid who apparently strummed her heartstrings before she even knew what heartbreak was. The room goes quiet, and Jin Yoonho just stands there, blinking like a pianist who suddenly forgot the next note. He finally speaks up, pointing out how slim the chances are that Seolhee would still end up with her first love, especially since he's someone from her early teen years. Seolhee says nothing. Just silence. The kind that echoes. The kind that makes people shift uncomfortably. Yoonho, clearly rattled by her reaction, immediately apologizes for saying anything, looking at her like she just cancelled his subscription to emotional stability. So Jung turns to him, visibly stunned that he even said sorry, but he follows up by admitting he probably pried a little too much. Seolhee waves it off like a pro, grabs her glass, and pivots harder than a politician in a scandal. She raises her drink high and shifts the spotlight with a toast, calm, classy, and perfectly timed. She congratulates the couple with a soft smile that says let's not, and So Jung, back in bride mode, thanks her for the kind words. The group clinks glasses and throws back their drinks, leaving the conversation behind, at least for now. It's honestly a mystery how Seolhee even ended up at this bridal shower, considering she and the bride aren't exactly sending each other heart emojis. But here she is, decked out in forced smiles and polite small talk, doing what can only be described as high-level emotional gymnastics. Truth is, Seolhee showed up not out of deep friendship, but more to hold on to her pride, playing it cool, wishing So Jung well, and subtly trying to one-up her by being the gracious guest. It's less about celebration and more about strategy, like she's playing for D chess in heels. The irony? She's not even trying to win anything, she just wants to make sure So Jung doesn't. And honestly, it's exhausting. Once the other ladies start crashing for the night, Solhee quietly gathers her things and heads for the exit, her smile muscles officially clocking out. Her mind's already racing ahead to tomorrow. She's got a new student to teach, someone from a ridiculously wealthy family who's offering a fee that could probably buy a small car. No pressure or anything. But as she waits for the elevator, another thought creeps in, totally uninvited: Woo Jae-oppa. Somehow, without fail, she always ends up thinking about him during rough moments, like he's her emotional support ghost from middle school. It's bizarre, really, how someone she knew as a teenager still lives rent-free in her head, especially when life feels heavy. But that's Solhee for you, quiet on the outside, symphony of unresolved feelings on the inside. Solhee's developed a bit of a coping mechanism over the years. Whenever life feels like it's spiraling or just plain boring, she mentally retreats to the one place that never lets her down, her memories of Woo Jae-oppa. It's her personal comfort playlist, except instead of music, it's grainy flashbacks of middle school heart flutters. As she replays bits of the drunk conversation her friends had earlier, it hits her just how much those old moments still mean. They weren't just memories, they were the golden age of her emotional stability. Woo Jae-oppa was her everything back then, and even now, after 12 long years and countless adulting struggles later, those memories remain untouched, unbothered, and unfortunately, unforgettable. Despite growing into someone weighed down by self-doubt and a lingering inferiority complex, Solhee clings to those feelings like they're the last spark of a light she used to have. Then ding, the elevator arrives, and any chance at a peaceful emotional spiral is instantly squashed. Inside the elevator, she's greeted with the very bold sight of a young couple mid-make-out session like they thought they were in a K-drama finale. The sudden eye contact? Chilling. The three of them just freeze, caught in a slow-motion face-off of second-hand embarrassment. The lovebirds abruptly break it off, straightening themselves like they didn't just audition for a romance movie, and step out in dramatic silence. Solhee, now alone in the lift, is left to reassemble her thoughts, trying to figure out which was more overwhelming, her lingering first love or the unexpected elevator rom-com. Solhee steps into the elevator like she's moving through molasses, slow and dazed, trying to process the emotional tornado that just spun through her night. Her head drops as the doors slide shut, and the weight of what she just saw settles in like a stubborn app update, unwanted and impossible to ignore. That man, it couldn't be. But it looked just like him. Her brain does a hard reboot as she bursts into this slightly unhinged laugh, the kind you let out when reality's so ridiculous, even your stress decides to take a coffee break. No way, she tells herself. Just a doppelganger. A glitch in the matrix. Woo Jae-oppa is not out here locking lips with some married woman in an elevator. Not after 12 years. That's not how first loves make a comeback. She tries to rationalize it with every ounce of emotional duct tape she's got, but the pit in her stomach refuses to chill. Sure, she'd always fantasized about bumping into him again, maybe in a bookstore, maybe at a music festival, something swoony and serendipitous. But this? Elevator adultery cameo? Definitely not in the script. Still, life has a funny way of crushing dream sequences with cold hard reality, and as the elevator dings at the ground floor, Solhee steps out knowing one thing for sure: fairy tales don't prepare you for plot twists like this. A new day dawns as Solhee makes her way to her first lesson at the client's house, still half convinced yesterday's elevator drama was a fever dream. The same elegant lady from the hotel greets her with a warm smile and introduces her son, a boy so introverted he makes library mice look like party animals. Solhee has no idea this gig will upend everything she thought she knew about teaching and life, because behind that quiet exterior lurks a twist even her steady bow arm can't predict. What about this place is going to change her world? Find out next! A taxi drops Solhee off at the grand mansion, and as she steps out, she's greeted by her employer with a warm welcome. But then, the shock sets in. It's the same woman she bumped into at the hotel just last night, and now her mind is buzzing with 1,000 questions. Her employer casually mentions that she'll have her driver take Solhi back after this visit and bring her whenever she's needed, but Solhi's mind is miles away, trying to figure out the odd connection. Why do these wealthy women, like her employer, have relationships with younger men? She shakes her head, attempting to clear her thoughts, but the mystery sticks. Noticing her distracted state, her employer calls her attention, pulling her back to the present. Solhi snaps out of her mental whirlwind just in time as the madam introduces her son, Heewon, and nudges him to say hello. The young man introduces himself, and Solhi follows suit, promising to make their time together both educational and fun. She can tell Heewon is a bit timid from the way he carries himself, his posture and demeanor giving off that vibe. The madam jumps in, saying her son is quite introverted, and she was intrigued when he showed interest in learning the viola, so she's looking forward to Solhi's guidance and encouragement. Solhi reassures her she'll do a great job with Heewon, but as she takes a closer look at the madam, she can't help but wonder about the kind of person she really is. She seems like such a calm and modest middle-aged lady, yet there's this whole other layer, like she's living some secret life. The madam, noticing the quiet exchange, asks Heewon to guide Solhi to his room, and as Solhi follows him down the hall, her mind continues to race, still wrapped up in the puzzle of why this seemingly ordinary woman is leading a life full of mystery. Heewon takes the lead, guiding Solhi to his bedroom and addressing her as Ms. Kim. Once inside, Solhi surveys the room, her eye scanning the furniture as she gathers her music notes. Her gaze lands on Heewon's redwood resin viola, a clear sign of its high price, and she can't help but think about how rich people just have a different kind of lifestyle. Heewon picks up his viola and prepares for his first lesson, but Ms. Kim steps closer, suggesting they start with his posture. She gently adjusts his neck, advising him not to bend it too much, then shifts his wrists, pointing out that poor posture can become a habit, which is hard to break later on. As she's about to continue, she suddenly stops mid-sentence, caught off guard by Heewon staring directly at her. It catches her off guard, making her awkwardly pull away, clear her throat, and quickly claim, "You're doing it right now." Ms. Kim is taken aback by his intense gaze, and in an attempt to ease the tension, she decides to start a conversation to break the silence. Solhi, curious, asks Heewon why he decided to learn the viola, a question that catches him off guard. She points out that most students don't usually consider the viola, often opting for more popular instruments like the violin or piano, so she's genuinely curious. Heewon stays silent for a moment, and when he finally speaks, he stumbles over his words at first, but eventually shares that as a child, he had heard a viola recital that left a lasting impression on him. He says it was beautiful, and that's when he was drawn to the instrument. Heewon explains that he wants to experience that same emotion again and believes the best way to do so is by learning to play it himself. Solhi listens intently, then smiles warmly, calling his reason heartwarming. Heewon returns the smile, and Solhi, feeling a bit playful, says she'd feel really special if she were the performer he had listened to all those years ago, the one who made him fall in love with the viola. She thinks that would be pretty cool. As she says this, she can't help but notice that Heewon's smile is surprisingly pretty. The lesson goes smoothly, and afterward, the madam thanks Solhi, asking if Heewon followed up well enough. Solhi affirms that he did a great job, and the madam, pleased, expresses hope that things will continue to go smoothly. She suggests Solhi wait a bit so their driver can take her home. As if on cue, a young man walks in behind Solhi and greets the madam. Solhi turns toward him, and the madam introduces him as Mr. Lee, the driver. Their eyes meet, and Mr. Lee introduces himself to Solhi. She's stunned to see him, and Heewon watches nearby, clearly interested in the exchange. Things are getting more complicated by the minute. First, Solhi meets the rich madam from the hotel, and now, she's face to face with Woo Jae, her first love, who turns out to be the madam's personal driver. Solhi observes him closely, noting that he hasn't changed much over the years. His fast strides and the habitual way he crooks his finger are still the same. It's almost like she has a superhuman ability to notice these little details in no time at all. The madam instructs Mr. Lee to help transport Solhi home now and in the future, and he nods in agreement before turning toward Solhi, almost as if he's scanning her for something, like he's trying to piece together a puzzle. Solhi recalls how he always seemed to observe people seriously, as if nothing escapes his notice. Mr. Lee catches her attention and informs her that it's time to leave. The moment the words register, Solhee tenses up, realizing that it's truly Woo Jae-oppa. Let's be real, she had known from the moment she saw him at the hotel last night, but she had been in denial, trying to push the thought away. In the car, her mind begins to spiral as she questions her feelings. Has she been wronged? Is she pathetic? No, she concludes, it's anger. Breaking the silence, she asks how long he's been driving for the madam, and he answers, saying it's been about 2 years now. Solhee registers the information, mulling it over. 2 years, he? And she can't help but connect the dots, he's been with the madam for that long, and now she's curious about how their affair even started. Damn, Solhee's an overthinker for real, and this whole thing is gnawing at her from the inside. Unable to keep it in, she finally calls out, Woo Jae-oppa, it's been a long while. Mr. Lee is visibly startled when Solhee addresses him as Woo Jae-oppa. He stumbles over his words, asking, who are you? MS. Kim tenses up at the realization that he doesn't remember her, though she's not exactly shocked, after all, it's been 12 years. Still, the awkwardness is undeniable. Solhee quickly recovers and introduces herself, reminding him that she's Solhee, from all those years ago, even pointing out the secret spot they used to frequent. As she does, he starts to piece it together, his mind racing to reconnect the dots. Solhee, however, begins to feel a bit uneasy, realizing she may not have thought this through. Her presence might just be a faint blip in his hazy memories of the past. Just as the car halts at a red light, something clicks in Woo Jae's mind. His eyes widen, and a look of shock spreads across his face as he suddenly remembers her. He's amazed, noting how much she's changed since they last met. Solhee, caught in the moment, blushes harder than she ever thought possible, her heart racing at the realization that Woo Jae-oppa has finally remembered who she is. Woo Jae mentions that he'd actually thought about Solhee when he brought up his interest in learning the viola, though he never imagined she'd end up being his teacher. He gives her a warm smile, as if genuinely pleased to see her again. Solhee can't help but celebrate the thought of him remembering her, feeling her cheeks heat up to a bright pink. But as her mind races, she tries to push aside the reality of what she saw the other night, Woo Jae and the madam sharing a moment in the hotel elevator, probably continuing what they'd started. At the thought, Solhee tightens her fist, her mind swimming with more questions. What circumstances had made such an affair possible? As she opens her mouth to ask, no words come out. Before she can dive deeper into her swirling thoughts, Mr. Lee announces they've arrived at her stop, and Solhee is jolted back to the present, momentarily shaken from her troubling musings. Ms. Kim awkwardly steps out of the car, but just before she's fully out, she catches a glimpse of Mr. Lee extending his hand to help her. It's a fleeting moment, but it plays in slow motion in her mind. The second her hand touches his, her heart leaps, and she's almost frozen in the intensity of it. Once safely on the sidewalk, she thanks him, but he brushes it off, claiming it's just part of his job. As he turns to leave, she suddenly stops him, suggesting they hang out to catch up. Mr. Lee takes a beat, glances at his watch, and politely declines. Solhee is momentarily shaken, but she tries to keep her cool, insisting it's fine if he's busy. To make up for it, he offers to have coffee with her tomorrow, his treat. She happily accepts. Afterward, she heads inside, running a warm bath to soak her thoughts. As she relaxes in the tub, her mind drifts to Woo Jae and the upcoming coffee date. It's clear that, despite everything, she still likes him a lot. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee arrives at the madam's bedroom, sits beside her as she lays in bed, and, upon sensing his presence, she undresses, and they lie down together. Let's rewind the clock to a summer exactly 13 years ago. Back then, little Solhee is a delicate, sneeze-away-from-bedrest kind of kid who's just moved into a new neighborhood. Things aren't exactly sunshine and rainbows, try pothole-ridden roads, neighbors who act like they're allergic to friendliness, and bullies who've clearly majored in meanness. To make things worse, they take her beloved viola and strum it like a rock star's electric guitar, which, spoiler alert, it's definitely not. It drives her nuts, understandably. Looking back now, Solhee sometimes blames her own short fuse too. Girl had the patience of a microwave. One especially rough day, she wanders off to an open field, plops down with a sigh big enough to shake the grass, and lets the tears roll. Everything feels upside down, new place, rude faces, and violas being mistreated like air guitars. In a storm of frustration, she grabs her viola and raises it like she's about to go full rock concert finale on a nearby rock. But just before she delivers the smashing blow, someone steps in. And who might this mystery figure be? None other than Wu J Papa, stepping in like a surprise plot twist with perfect timing. He catches her totally off guard when he interrupts, casually asking what she's up to like she isn't seconds away from committing a musical tragedy. That's the very first time their paths cross, right there at the rock that nearly claimed her viola's life. The spot actually used to be his go-to place for recess breaks, but even though their meeting is pure coincidence, he doesn't chase her away or question her dramatic flair. Instead, it slowly becomes their shared hideout, a little off-grid nook where she starts showing up just to see him. Over time, the girl catches feelings faster than a clickbait headline, and now, years later, she realizes those feelings never really left. Fast forward to the present, they're at a cozy coffee shop, and just like before, he's still not pushing her away. Honestly, it makes her heart do a full-on slow dance. Then, out of nowhere, Wu J-Oppa hits her with a question so specific, she nearly spills her drink. He actually remembers something from way back, and she's equal parts flustered and impressed. Once she regains her composure, she quietly admits she didn't get into her dream university, it was a tough climb. He nods, pokes a little fun at himself for being MIA all this time, and casually drops the fact that he's now a high school graduate. Then, with a soft smile, he praises her for sticking with the viola through thick and thin, and just like that, her heart threatens to melt right into her latte. Our girl doesn't let the conversation simmer down just yet. Nope, she leans in, curiosity sparkling in her eyes, and asks about him. What's he been up to all this time? When did he come to Seoul? She even slips in a confession that she once made a trip back to the town village just because he crossed her mind. Bold of her, but hey, sometimes the heart hits send before the brain catches up. Wu J-Oppa gives her the lowdown on his recent life updates, casually dropping nuggets of info between sips like they're old friends catching up after a long commercial break. He takes her turn, updating him on her own adventures post-orchestra, tossing in some light-hearted bits along the way. The conversation flows easily at first, full of warm coffee and warmer memories, but after a while, the words start to dry up. He finds herself getting a little stiff. Funny, she always thought they'd have too much to talk about, not this awkward pause that suddenly shows up uninvited. Still, even with her tongue briefly taking a coffee break, the moment feels meaningful, like even the silence has something sweet to say. Solhee's mind is buzzing with questions, most of them circling around the madam and her mysterious connection to Wu J-Oppa like bees around a very juicy rumor. But she knows better than to drop the curiosity bomb just yet, so she keeps it classy, sits across from him in thoughtful silence, sipping her drink like it's going to reveal secrets. The stillness hangs in the air long enough for him to notice, and with a glance at the clock, he casually asks if she's ready to head out, reminding her she's got a lesson to catch. They both stand, and although she hesitates a little, because, let's be honest, who wants to walk away when your long-lost crush is within coffee distance, she finds the courage to ask for his number. Without skipping a beat, he hands her his phone, but instead of punching in his digits, he asks for hers, cheekily adding that they'll be seeing a lot more of each other anyway, so it's pretty thoughtful of her to ask. Solhee, flustered but playing it cool, gives her number. As she's saving it, something catches her eye, his contact list. It's empty. Well, almost. Besides her freshly added number, there's just one other contact on the whole phone. That tiny detail clings to her brain like a post-it note of mystery, and suddenly, she's wondering. Who in the world is that one person? After stepping into adulthood with a hopeful heart and a dash of stubborn optimism, Solhee once made a solo trip back to the old town village, secretly dreaming she might just bump into Wu J-Oppa again, because in her heart, she truly believed he'd still be there. Fast forward to the present, she hands his phone back gently, and the two of them exit the coffee shop, the bell chiming above them like a background track. Wu J takes the lead, strolling ahead with his usual calm, while Solhee follows behind a bit slower, lost in her thoughts. She can't help but remember how, during that trip, not a single person in the village had a clue where Wu J had gone. It was as if he'd vanished off the grid on purpose, like a magician with commitment issues. That odd thought flickers through her mind as they walk toward the car. Later, they pull up to the madam's grand mansion, because subtlety definitely skipped that building, and Hee-won is already at the entrance, ready to greet Ms. Kim. He offers to carry her things like a well-trained but slightly mischievous gentleman. Just then, the madam herself makes an entrance, calling for teacher Kim with her usual flair. She informs Sol-hee she's heading out for a while with her husband, and in the politest version of "you good," asks if it's alright to leave Hee-won and Ms. Kim alone together for a bit. Sol-hee feels a little rattled by the madam's sudden announcement, but she keeps her cool like a pro, offering a polite nod and wishing her a safe trip, as if her inner thoughts aren't screaming about potential drama in the car. The affair flashes across her mind like an unwanted pop-up ad, and oddly enough, there's a tiny, unfiltered part of her that imagines how satisfying it would be to spill the beans to the madam's husband one day. But she pushes the thought aside as the madam turns to Hee-won with a sharp "be on your best behavior" warning, like he's not already standing there looking perfectly innocent. As the couple leaves, Sol-hee can't help but feel a sour twinge, worrying the madam might pull something shady with Woo Jae-oppa on the drive. Still, before she can dwell too long on that uncomfortable mental image, Hee-won calls out to her, and the two head upstairs for his lesson. On the staircase, Sol-hee casually comments that the madam seems extra focused on Hee-won lately, to which he coolly replies that he's already 20, basically ancient in teenager years. He encourages her to speak freely with him, and at first, she hesitates. After all, he may be younger, but he's also her employer's son, which makes the social ladder a bit complicated. But Hee-won insists, not budging an inch. Eventually, Sol-hee relents, joking that she'll still call him student Hee-won out of habit. He immediately shuts that down, politely but firmly asking her to just call him by his name, no title, no age gap formality, just Hee-won. Ms. Kim gets a little flustered, because let's be real, the vibe just did a subtle 180. 1 second they're talking like teacher and student, next thing she knows, Hyun's ditching honorifics and casually asking for first name privileges like it's no big deal. She plays it off, but in the back of her mind she's thinking, this kid's kind of weird, polite, but weird. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the madam is seated at a sleek dinner table surrounded by a group of sharply dressed men, smiling and sipping her wine like she's hosting a talk show. Outside the venue, Woo Jae-oppa leans against a wall with a cigarette in hand, looking like he stepped straight out of a moody drama poster. He's got that quiet, broody charm turned all the way up, and honestly, it's borderline unfair how cool he looks doing absolutely nothing. At the dinner table, the men grumble about the young girl who had served them, clearly unimpressed that she didn't slap on a smile while doing it, as if she'd ruined the steak by frowning at it. Madam's husband chimes in with his thoughts, nodding along, while one of the older men shifts gears and loudly praises President Woo for marrying eye-banging beauty, pointing right at Hyun's mom. She responds with a polite smile and a playful chuckle, pretending to be modest, though the old man doesn't let up, he goes full-on poetic, showering her with compliments like he's auditioning for a commercial. He then slips into a nostalgic monologue about his own marriage, complete with dramatic sighs and exaggerated tales of his younger days. The two older men joke that they wouldn't mind being broke as long as their wives looked like Hae-jung, earning a few chuckles around the table. President Woo laughs too, but waves it off, joking that they're laying it on too thick, any more praise and his wife's head might not fit through the door. With a smile, he steers the conversation toward business before things get even more theatrical. Beneath the table, Hae-jung sits with her fist clenched, her knuckles white, her expression still gracious but her body language quietly betraying a heat rising inside her like she's seconds from boiling over. Just outside the dinner venue, Mr. Lee enjoys a quiet smoke when Madam Hae-jung and President Woo step out to join him. President Woo raises an eyebrow, a little surprised to find Mr. Lee still lingering around, and casually mentions he'd planned to leave with his wife. He grumbles about Chairman Kim tapping out early thanks to one too many drinks, effectively cutting their dinner short, though judging by the way the chairman was slurring compliments, some might call it a mercy. He tells Mr. Lee to take the car and clock out for the night, and Mr. Lee nods without protest, ready to call it a day. But just as he turns to leave, he hears Madam Hae-jung's voice crack slightly, and it stops him in his tracks. She sounds hurt, betrayed even, as she confronts her husband, saying she felt more like a bar hostess than his wife tonight, and all he did was laugh along like it was a comedy show. Mr. Lee's eyes widen, caught in the awkward middle of a very private moment unfolding in a very public space. Hae-jung doesn't hold back, calling out everything her husband did or didn't do during dinner, while President Wu stands there like he's waiting for a punchline. He squints at her, genuinely puzzled, and asks if she really expected him to stand up and scold the chairman like a teacher with misbehaving students. He shakes his head, tells her to get a grip, and reminds her it's all just business. His voice hardens a little as he insists she learn to separate what's public from what's private, like someone flipping a switch, one moment charming host, the next, CEO issuing protocol. President Wu raises his voice just a notch, asking if Haijung truly understands how badly things could have gone if he'd spoiled the chairman's mood, like upsetting them would summon a corporate apocalypse. At that moment, it's as if Shin Haijung wraps herself in a cloak of shame, her shoulders tremble, her lips press tight, and all the fight drains from her. Business, that's all her husband ever talks about, and she's clearly reached the end of her rope. President Wu, still as composed as ever, sighs and tells her to knock it off. He's seen this scene one too many times, and he's growing tired of reruns. Even with tears streaking down her face, he remains unmoved, not offering so much as a comforting word. Instead, he coolly states that it'll be too awkward spending the rest of the evening glaring at each other, so why not do them both a favor and go home separately? With that, he walks off, leaving Haijung behind with Mr. Lee, who suddenly found himself in a drama he never auditioned for. During the car ride home, the silence doesn't last long. Madam Haijung, eyes still glassy, turns to Mr. Lee and asks if he's curious about what happened back there. He replies with a sharp no, not wanting to be dragged into any domestic turbulence, but she starts explaining anyway, because apparently, denial isn't enough to stop a heart that's been waiting too long to be heard. Shin Haijung's voice trembles slightly as she confesses that she no longer believes marriage can be sustained by love. She means it with a weight that sinks deep into her chest. Her thoughts wander to the vow she took, how she once accepted the idea of a high social standing, thinking it would secure a future for her, something stable to hold on to. But somewhere along the way, the reality of her marriage didn't align with what she had imagined, and though she realized it wasn't what she truly wanted, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. She talks about Hyun's father, stubborn and set in his ways, and concludes that staying in the marriage would be the better option for young Hyun. Mr. Lee listens in silence for a moment, his gaze forward, before he turns and asks, half joking, if she's drunk. Haijung's answer is simple, she tells him to pull over. He finds a quiet spot and stops the car, but before he can even ask her what she's doing, Haijung opens the door and steps out with a sudden, unexpected urgency. Mr. Lee's heart leaps into his throat as panic sets in, but then, in an instant, he watches in disbelief as she approaches his door, undressing right there on the side of the road. She slips into the car and their world shifts, the air heavy between them as they find an unexpected intimacy in the quiet of the car, the tension from earlier now transformed. Back at Haijung's place, Hyun is putting in serious effort, working alongside Ms. Kim as they shuffle things around, including the surprisingly heavy viola. After a bit of grumbling about his sore arms, because apparently violas double as gym equipment, Ms. Kim leans in with a conspiratorial smile and suggests they take a break before they both turn into musical martyrs. Hyun heads to the kitchen, returns with coffee, and hands her a cup like a true gentleman in training. As they settle into the lounge, she compliments his quick progress, joking that if he keeps this up, Juilliard might start calling him instead. She insists that encouraging him makes her own time here feel meaningful. Between sips, Ms. Kim casually asks if he ever chats with the driver, which prompts Hyun to clarify that he's not all that close with Woo Ji-hyung, emphasis on the hyung since the guy's technically his mom's driver, not his. Besides, Hyun drives himself like a grown-up, thank you very much. MS. Kim tries to keep the small talk alive but tosses in a goofy comment that lands with a thud, leaving them both blinking through a moment of classic awkward silence. Hyun saves it by casually sharing what little he knows about Mr. Lee's origin story. Apparently, before driving sedans, he was busy running the show at a lounge bar. The vibe is cozy, the coffee's decent, and the tension briefly defeated. Hyun recalls that Mr. Lee got the job through a solid recommendation, apparently the kind of reference that makes background checks look like overkill, so Haijung accepted it without batting an eye. Ms. Kim takes a thoughtful sip of her coffee, eyes narrowing slightly as her imagination kicks into gear. She starts mentally shuffling through every service job imaginable: bartender, barista, bellboy, probably even a barbershop quartet at this point, wondering which past role Woo Jae-oppa might have filled. Hee-won catches the faraway look on her face, eyebrows raised, and decides to poke the bubble. He leans in a little, voice low and a tad mischievous, and apologizes before asking if she's maybe interested in his mom's driver. The question hits like an unexpected plot twist. Ms. Kim practically launches off the couch, jolting like she just sat on a live wire. In seconds, she's caught in a full-on coughing fit, hacking so hard it nearly echoes, while Hee-won jumps back, genuinely startled, unsure whether to pat her back or call for emergency services. Between coughs and flustered fanning, she insists there's no interest at all. Mr. Lee's just someone she used to know, a long-lost acquaintance whose contact she'd somehow misplaced until fate plopped him back into her life. She smooths it over by explaining she's just curious about how Woo Jae-oppa's been doing, nothing more. Totally casual. Definitely not suspicious at all. Hyun's surprised to hear they've met before. He genuinely didn't think Ms. Kim and Mr. Lee had any history, but before he can ask more, she quickly tells him not to get the wrong idea. Her voice is steady, but the more she talks, the more tangled the explanation gets, and it's honestly becoming a little painful to watch. Meanwhile, her brain's doing somersaults, trying to keep everything from spiraling. Just when she thinks it can't get worse, Hee-won, bless his helpful little heart, offers to set up a meeting with Mr. Lee. That suggestion lands like a brick through a window, and things officially enter Weird Town. He's just trying to be polite, really, but she's internally spiraling, normally the queen of cool, but at the mention of Woo Jae-oppa, her poker face jumps ship. Hee-won clearly notices something, which only makes her panic quietly louder. She turns to him, locking eyes, mind racing with the horrifying possibility that he might go blabbing to his mom. If Hae-jung hears Ms. Kim's been asking about her driver? That's a career ender. And no job means no more chance encounters with the mysteriously charming Woo Jae-oppa. The air grows dense with awkwardness, so Hee-won, sensing the rising tension, cheerfully suggests they cut the break short and get back to work. She nods in agreement, silently thanking him for the escape hatch and pretending her soul didn't just glitch for 5 straight minutes. As Ms. Kim follows Hee-won back to his bedroom for the lesson, she gives herself a mental scolding of epic proportions. This isn't the time to get sidetracked by tall drivers with mysterious pasts and nice arms. She's here to work, not to star in a soap opera. The name Im So-jung flashes through her mind like a cautionary tale in heels, and she silently vows not to let herself spiral into any doing silly things because of a guy territory. Meanwhile, in a much glossier part of town, Im So-jung is living the bridal dream, hopping between racks of designer clothes with her fiancé at a high-end boutique that probably charges by the air. As she holds up a stunning outfit, she teasingly tells her man she's planning to wear it on their honeymoon, subtle hint level, expert. Her fiancé nods, says something half-hearted, but his eyes are locked on his phone like it's got the answers to the universe. So Jung narrows her eyes, her bridal senses tingling, and strolls over with all the calm of a storm cloud. Before he can blink, she snatched the phone out of his hands, and boom, plot twist, he's been scrolling through none other than Kim Sol-hee's online profile. Chaos level, activated. He immediately jumps into defense mode, sputtering explanations faster than a broken coffee machine. Jin Yoon-ho tries to make it all sound perfectly logical, but honestly, nothing screams bad idea like creeping on another girl's profile while shopping with your fiancé. Jin Yoon-ho, caught red-handed with Kim Sol-hee's profile on his screen, scrambles to explain himself like a student bluffing through an oral exam. He claims he's scouting potential partners for the future, specifically for the academy he thought Im So-jung was planning to open. According to him, it'd be easier working with someone he already knows. So-jung immediately shuts that idea down with the grace of a queen and the fire of a dragon. An academy? Nope. Not happening. She reminds him that she's marrying the Jin Yoon-ho, the brilliant pianist, and her post-marriage plans do not include starting an educational institution unless it's an academy for spoiling him rotten. Yoon-ho, understandably, is a bit stunned she's trashing the whole idea, especially since she'd casually mentioned it once in the past, but before he can even start to land his defense, So-jung cuts in like a pro debater. She slides his phone back into his hand, smiling wide enough to make anyone else believe all is well, then calmly drops an emotional bomb. She loves him deeply, but she can't help wondering if a part of him still isn't over Sol-hee. The room temperature drops a few degrees as she delivers that line with a smile so sweet it almost hides the sting. She says she trusts him, really, she does, but also makes it clear that Sol-hee, as far as she knows, is a heartless train wreck of a person who couldn't possibly have her soon-to-be husband's affection. Meanwhile, Yoonho is left speechless, probably wondering how he went from scrolling to emotional whiplash in under 5 minutes. Im So-jung leans in, her fingers gently lifting Jin Yoonho's chin as if adjusting a delicate sculpture, locking eyes with him like she's trying to read his soul. She reminds him, softly but firmly, just how far they've come together, every performance, every promise, every picture-perfect moment, and then asks the question that could make any man sweat, would he ever leave her for someone like Sol-hee? It's not loud, not dramatic, but the weight of it is enough to make the air feel thick. Jin Yoonho, caught in the intensity, nods and swears she's the only one he loves. Crisis averted, for now. But before the moment can simmer down, some excited fans spot them, rushing over with big smiles and bigger energy. Turns out, one of them is a major fan of his, and just as Yoonho starts to open his mouth, So-jung swoops in like a PR manager on a mission. She beams, practically draping herself over him as she confirms he's the pianist, laying the claim on thick like a trademark. The fans, still buzzing, assume So-jung is the violist getting married to Jin Yoonho, which she confirms with a dazzling smile. Congratulations fly, cameras come out, and the next thing you know, they're posing for pictures like it's a magazine shoot. Through it all, Jin Yoonho says nothing. He just stands there, slowly absorbing every second, every smile, every tightly controlled gesture. And honestly? In that moment, you kind of get what Sol-hee meant. Geese. Back in school, Sol-hee always got this cartoon villain vibe from Im So-jung, not the cape-wearing, world-dominating kind, but the petty high school edition who thrives on drama like it's her part-time job. So-jung had a habit of whispering behind people's backs as if gossip were a competitive sport, and she seemed genuinely allergic to seeing others succeed. At first, Sol-hee bought into the whole evil queen bee narrative, but with time, and a little brain power, she realized So-jung wasn't some master manipulator, just someone with a lot of feelings and maybe too much free time. Since Sol-hee flew mostly under the radar in So-jung's drama series, they kept things civil, like two co-workers who don't talk unless absolutely necessary. Things got mildly chaotic when Jin Yoonho entered the scene and So-jung decided Sol-hee was her new target, but even that felt more irritating than threatening, like being poked repeatedly with a plastic fork. So-jung even spread a rumor that Sol-hee liked their music director, who, by the way, is happily married with kids and just really into choir harmonies. Sol-hee wasn't particularly fazed, treating So-jung like a summer fly, annoying, yes, but not worth swatting at. That is, until the rumor somehow fluttered its way to the music director himself, who then approached Sol-hee for a chat that was awkward enough to make a musical number sound appealing. Sol-hee is seriously rattled when the music director casually walks up to her and brings up the rumor. Her soul practically leaves her body mid-sentence. Things go from awkward to full-blown horror movie plot twist when he suggests they continue the conversation off campus, like, say, at a hotel room. That night. Because apparently, nothing says clarification chat like a dimly lit suite and suspiciously bad judgment. While this very questionable offer is being made, none other than Im So-jung is hiding nearby, probably crouched like a nosy raccoon, ears perked and thinking she just uncovered the scandal of the year. Just as the tension could boil over, Hyun's voice cuts through the fog of Sol-hee's flashback, pulling her back to reality. She snaps out of it, blinking like someone who accidentally sat through a thriller when they signed up for a rom-com. Hyun tells her class is over and politely checks if she's okay going home alone since his mom is still out. Being the independent queen she is, she declines his offer to drive her home. Hyun mentions feeling guilty since her pay is supposed to cover transportation too, but Ms. Kim, unbothered and forever composed, brushes it off, tells him it's fine, and gets ready to leave. She even throws in a cheerful wave. But then, just as she's stepping away, something happens. MS. Kim pauses mid-step as her eyes land on a face she doesn't recognize, a sharply dressed man who's clearly not in the best mood. Turns out, it's Hyun's dad, and he looks like he just walked out of a board meeting and into a storm cloud. Hyun greets him, all smiles, but his father isn't here for small talk. The moment Hee-won calls his mother mom, the man's expression darkens like someone just insulted his stock portfolio. He snaps at Hee-won, clearly offended by the term, and Hee-won quickly apologizes, sensing that this is not a day to test boundaries. Meanwhile, our girl quietly takes in the scene and can't help but wonder why the madam's husband looks old enough to have personally invented the piano. President Woo, as he's introduced, asks if Shin Hae-jung is back yet. Hee-won says no, assuming his parents had plans, but his dad dismisses that and grumbles that she should be back already. Then, without missing a beat, his attention zeroes in on Ms. Kim like a hawk spotting a mouse. He demands to know who she is, prompting our startled heroine to awkwardly greet him and give her name in the most polite "please don't yell at me" tone imaginable. President Woo doesn't even blink before turning back to Hee-won and announcing that he'd rather see his son doing something that involves more muscle and less melody. Then, just for emotional flavor, he throws in a casual insult and calls Hee-won puny, like he's trying out for Worst Father of the Year. President Woo shifts his steely gaze to Ms. Kim and gives her what might be the most formal pep talk in history, telling her to do a good job, as if she's a soldier heading into battle. He even adds that she shouldn't hesitate to discipline Hee-won if he steps out of line, clearly mistaking viola lessons for military drills. Ms. Kim, ever the diplomatic soul, politely deflects with a smile and says there's no need, Hyun's a good kid. But as she glances at her student, she notices something unsettling: his trembling. Her easygoing expression falters with concern. President Woo gives his son one final stiff remark, tosses a curt goodbye to Ms. Kim, and walks off like a dramatic final act. The second he's out of sight, Ms. Kim turns to Hee-won and finds him crouched down, breathing like he just ran a marathon, with a backpack full of emotional damage. She gently steps closer, visibly worried, but he rushes to apologize, trying to wave it off and begging her not to look at him like this. He's clearly embarrassed, the kind of embarrassed where you wish the floor would open up and swallow you whole. But something about the way he says it tugs at her, like a string on her conscience, and without hesitation, she crouches beside him, matching his level like it's the most natural thing to do. Softly, she asks if talks with his dad are always like this, but Hee-won, voice shaky and pride cracked, insists they aren't. Still, even with the tension lingering in the air like dust in sunlight, Ms. Kim doesn't let it go dark. She smiles, steady and kind, and tells him that even if his dad doesn't get it, his love for the viola is still something worth playing for. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and ensure to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time.